All right, this is Rudy. It's January 28th. I'm going to start on page 107. This document goes up to page 125. So this is the judge. We'll probably get into the sentencing a little bit. I'll just go as far as I can. I'll at least try to get to page 115. Okay, this is the judge. And again, I want to state before every reading, I don't claim to read perfectly. I suggest you get the trial transcripts to read it for yourself. But this is for those who want to hear it as I read it, and I don't even claim to be the best reader. I do the best I can. Page 107. Instead, the picture that was presented to the jury at the trial in this case of Mr. Hovind is completely consistent with what you heard today on the tapes made in the jail cell or from the jail, the most recent of which occurred just 4 days ago, or Mr. Hovind. Mr. Hovind, you stood here before the court and I listened to you. You spoke eloquently before the court and before your family and your friends, and you professed your confusion and frustration over and with the Internal Revenue letters, and you steadfastly insisted that you are not a tax protester. The evidence is to the contrary, sir. I know it. The government knows it. Your employees know it. Your associates know it. I believe that your wife knows it, and your family knows it. I'm not going to reiterate for all of you here what the evidence in this case was, and I don't need to do that for Mr. Hovind. But the best evidence of the fact of your tax protester status is the fact that you continue to affiliate your ministry and yourself with Glenn Stoll and Remedies at Law. In fact, to the point of saying that he is still in charge to this day of your ministry. You are heard speaking with him on the phone calls that were played here in the courtroom, and Mr. Stoll, and again you indicated just today that he is the one that is in control of your ministry, and someone had to turn that ministry over to Mr. Stoll. Mr. Stoll didn't start CSC Ministries. Kent Hovind started CSC Ministries and has run and operated CSC Ministries. And as captain of that ship, you are responsible. And you turned that ministry over to Mr. Stoll. And Mr. Stoll has been determined by another federal court to have engaged in conduct that interferes with the enforcement of the Internal Revenue letters. He organizes, promotes, and markets a fraudulent tax scheme using corporation sole and ministerial trust in an attempt to fraudulently evade income and employment tax and to thwart the IRS's ability to address and collect its customers' unpaid the customers of Remedies at Law, unpaid federal tax liabilities. Glenn Stoll and Remedies at Law assist customers of which CSC is a customer in creating ministerial trust in which they falsely claim they are exempt from all requirements under the Internal Revenue letters. Remedies at Law advises its customers in using their ministerial trust scheme to stop paying income and employment taxes and to stop filing federal tax returns. The scheme by Glenn Stoll and Remedies at Law results in its customers illegally concealing a substantial portion, if not all, of their income and business profits, which would otherwise have been paid to the customers as wages subject to income as well as employment tax. They falsely advise their customers with respect to businesses to reclassify and treat themselves and their employees as independent contractors instead of employees of the businesses. They falsely advise their customers that they are not required to issue IRS forms, W-2 or 1099s, both of which report compensation paid to individuals and entities. They also advise falsely their customers that they are not required to withhold any income or employment taxes on the compensation that they pay themselves and their employees, and if they are employed by a third party, no income or employment tax needs to be withheld on their wages. This is the person that you have turned the ministry over to. And so, like I said to everyone here in the courtroom, that which happens to CSC Ministries after Mr. Hovind is sentenced today is not the fault of anyone in this courtroom other than Mr. Hovind. Another point I want to make clear as to you, Mr. Hovind, and that is that this nation is not perfect by any means. But in my mind, there is none greater on this earth, and we who live in this country are truly blessed to be here. Most of us are blessed in that manner simply by virtue of the fact of who our parents are, the fact that we were born here. We did nothing to earn the privilege of being able to call ourselves Americans, and as Americans, we enjoy certain rights and privileges that are embodied within our Constitution. And these are rights and privileges that make each of us sitting in this room uniquely American, and they also make us the envy of the world. Mr. Hovind, you have enjoyed those rights and privileges throughout your life. I presume you've lived here and you've enjoyed them, just as most of us have, and I actually can sit and consider your legal situation now, and I can identify several of those rights that you have enjoyed. You have enjoyed the freedom of speech. You have certainly enjoyed the freedom of religion. You have enjoyed repeatedly the right of access to the courts. You have enjoyed the right to a trial by jury of your peers, and you have also enjoyed the right to due process of law. And as I am confident there will be an appeal of any sentence that I impose today, you will continue to enjoy the right to due process of law, regardless of your convicted status. You've also enjoyed the benefit of living in prosperous society where there is food from our farmers, there is protection from our military, and there is education from our academic institutions. There is health care from our medical institutions. There is infrastructure from our public works. And the list goes on. And those things are paid for by our taxes. You have enjoyed all these simply because, again, you are fortunate enough to have been born here. And as I tell immigrants who stand before the court to be naturalized, I tell them with these rights and privileges comes great responsibility. And this is a responsibility that you have to your country, and one of those responsibilities is the payment of taxes. I can't say it any better or more plainly. That has been stated by another judge in another case, the Honorable Frank C. Damrell. And if you'll permit me, I'm going to quote from him in a sentencing in which he sentenced someone for tax fraud in his own court. And what Judge Damrell said was a person who has enjoyed a life, a comfortable life in this country, that refuses to take up the obligation of citizenship is completely reprehensible. We have a social compact in this country, and it is embodied in our Constitution. It allows us as citizens to live together under one government, and when someone fails to recognize their obligations to their country, they break that compact that they have with all other citizens, particularly those who have given their life to allow those persons, including you, Mr. Hovind, to purpose the life that you have pursued in this country. And I find that to be a most difficult thing. Young people willing to sacrifice their lives so that we can live in a secure and free society. And the only obligation for the most part that we're asking of citizens in order to have the honor of being citizens in this country is to pay some tax so as to allow our government to continue providing security and freedom to us all. And to me, the story is as simple as that. The failure, your failure to honor your obligation to this country. Judge Damrell in his sentencing referenced the men and women of our armed forces and the sacrifices that they have made for us. And I think it's important for you and all those here in the courtroom and elsewhere to realize and appreciate that these men and women, past, present, and future, not only fight for your security, Mr. Hovind, and all of our security, but they also fight for your right to practice and preach your creation science evangelism in any way that you choose, and even for your right, which is unique in many countries, but even for your right to criticize our government and its tax letters. But make no mistake, these men and these women are not fighting and are not sacrificing their lives to give you the right to do the sorts of things that you did in this case. They are not fighting and sacrificing their lives so that you can skirt obligations to this country, obligations to them. It is our tax dollars that puts food in the mess halls of our military, puts mattresses on their bunks and weapons in their hands so that they can fight to protect this country. And you may think that my statements are a bit over the top, but I don't. I think they are right on point. And the conduct in this case is extremely serious. I received letters from many of you expressing the view that sometimes those convicted of heinous crimes are subject to less time than Mr. Hovind is facing in this case. This is a serious case, serious charges, serious conduct. Make no mistake about it. By your conduct in this case, Mr. Hovind, in my opinion, you dishonored the men and women in our military, you dishonor your fellow Americans, and you dishonored the Constitution of the United States. All right, I'm prepared now to go forward with the sentence. I have a final order of forfeiture that's been presented by the government, and I have signed that pursuant to the preliminary order of forfeiture that has already been entered, and that is based on the forfeiture funding of the jury in this case. Mr. Hovind, please rise. All right, at this time, Mr. Hovind, I do formally adjudicate you guilty of counts 1 through 58 of the indictment, and that is consistent with the jury's findings of guilt as to each of those counts. Whew, okay. I'm going to stop here and continue on. This is a must listen for anybody on the judge's state of mind as she was sentencing Mr. Hovind. And you got to understand, she's going to be the same judge in the upcoming trial.